Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. In the studio, we've got a little bit of a fun experiment lined up for you guys. I've got my Hughes & Kettner 212 cab, and what we're going to do is kind of mix and match some speakers to see if we can find some really cool, interesting, and huge tones, or perhaps it'll just ruin what we have, but either way, it should be fun. Let's start the experiment. All right, so here's the process I'm going to use to record the different speakers in our 2x12 cab, because if we're going to do this, well, we might as well do it right. So first step is getting the same mic. So I've got a set of Austrian audio. These are the OC18 mics, very close tolerances. They say any two will be like a matched pair. So if you save up and get one studio mic, the next year you get the second one. It doesn't matter. You don't have to buy them at the same time if you want a matched pair. That's how close the tolerances are. So we've got the same mic, which means they're going to have the same frequency response. They're going to sound the same. And I'm going to mark off the cab so that we always put the mic in the same spot. All right, so I've taken some painter's tape and I've just marked off where I want to put the mic each time so that we're consistent and it's in the same spot on each speaker. And that is in between the edge of the speaker, which is the outside of the tape, and the center of the dust cap. So we're going to go in between that dust cap and the edge, and we've got just a nice little spot to put our OC18s, and I'm going to go 4 inches off the grill each time. So the mics will be in exactly the same spot each time. Now the Hughes & Kettner 212 cab normally comes with Celestion Vintage 30 speakers. You guys have heard that many times on my channel. This is my main cab, usually sits on the other side of the wall in my isolation booth. So Celestion Vintage 30s, very popular for a reason. They sound great clean. They sound, good with overdrive, good with distortion. So they're an extremely versatile speaker and they sound great in this cab. That being said, today is all about mixing and matching, and I've got 2 really interesting speakers to pair up with our Vintage 30. Firstly, we've got the Cannabis Rex. Very cool speaker. It's all made out of hemp and really recommended for people whose amps are too bright. It's a very, very warm and round speaker, so it should be interesting, in combination with that Vintage 30. Either it'll sound like amazing to have, something more bright and present and something more warm, or it'll just sound so mismatched, it'll sound terrible. I guess we'll find out. And speaker number 2 is our WGS ALNICO speaker. So in theory, it should be brighter and a little bit more present than the Vintage 30. So we've got kind of the Vintage 30 in the center, and then on one side we've got, the Cannabis Rex, and then we'll swap it out with the ALNICO and just see what kind of combinations we can get. Now, one final note before we start listening, I would recommend listening through some headphones, because what I'm going to do is pan one speaker to the left, one speaker to the right, so we can really hear the differences in the speaker and really hear if they're working together or against each other. All right, let's take a listen. So today I'm playing through the Valenti Nebula, and we've got the Celestion Vintage 30 on the left side, and on the right side we've got the Cannabis Rex. Let's just play some basic chords in the neck position here. So just listening through my monitors here, it does seem to have a pretty complex sound. Let's go to the middle position. Bridge. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is let's mute the Cannabis Rex, and I'm going to put the pan on the Vintage 30 in the center. Let's just listen to the Vintage 30 by itself. So yes, that mono, basically it would be like the traditional way you would just listen to a guitar, sounds much less spacious. Let's put both in again. Now, again, just listening through my monitors, those 2 speakers sound very compatible and actually not as different as I thought they might be. Let's mute the Vintage 30 here and just listen to the Cannabis Rex. I'm just going to center pan it here so we can just hear that. Let's unmute it. Got too many buttons to click here all at once. So I think it definitely is much more, you know, kind of mid-rangey. Let's pan it back and let's put both in again and play that same chord. Yeah, that sounds really good to me. Let's add some overdrive. All right, I've got some overdrive on and I'm in the neck pickup. Let's try just a few lead lines. So to me, it's just, you know, still sounds really compatible with each other. I've got a little bit of delay on there. But yeah, other than that, man, it sounds really good. Let's try the same thing in our bridge. Test 1 is in the books, and I gotta say, the Vintage 30 works really well with the Cannabis Rex. I was a little surprised by that. I thought the Cannabis Rex would be like much warmer, but it isn't. They're pretty compatible. I think the Cannabis Rex does have a little bit more mid-range, and like I said, the Vintage 30 is pretty, you know, a well-rounded speaker. So when they were panned, it gave a huge sound. I thought it sounded really nice, and then when I just picked one speaker, you know, it definitely sounded more one-dimensional, as you would expect, but, you know, using both together, I thought sounded fantastic. All right, now I'm gonna grab the cab and pull out the Cannabis Rex and put in our WGS ALNICO speaker. This one's quite a bit more expensive than the other two. If you wanna know exactly what I'm using, I'll put it all in the video description below. But anyway, I'll be back and I'll put this one up. We're gonna pair it with our Vintage 30. All right, so in that example, we had the Vintage 30 on the left and the ALNICO on the right. Now, it doesn't quite sound like maybe you're playing through a Les Paul on the left and a Strat on the right, or maybe the same guitar with like a Marshall and a Fender, but it does have like a pretty nice thickening. All right, so let's take a listen to each speaker individually. So I'm going to put both speakers center panned, and let's start by muting the Vintage 30. Okay, so this is just the ALNICO. All right, now let's listen to the Vintage 30. So in that example, it definitely becomes clear. You know what? I should take let's take the overdrive off here. That's that really shows the difference. So this is still the Vintage 30, I believe. Yes. Nice, you know, balanced sound. Everything looks, you know, really sweet, high end. And then let's listen to the ALNICO. So that's where you really hear the difference, you know, in the high end. That's that classic ALNICO, you know, chime. So it just has that upper presence. Okay, so now let's go back to the pan. So now we have both of them going on. So again, I think they work really well together. In the first example, I think if we have the V30 in the center, I think the Cannabis Rex was a little bit more mid-rangey and a little bit warmer. And now with that ALNICO, if I put the Overdrive back on here, let's again solo these to really show the difference. Okay. All right, so we've got the vintage 30 here with the Overdrive. So that was it by itself. Now let's do the ALNICO by itself. So you can really hear how the ALNICO is really kind of scooped in the mid-end. Low end and high end really scooped in the middle, whereas the vintage 30, has a lot more mid-range. And again, if we put them together and pan them, you get a nice, spacious tone. So I've wanted to do this experiment for a really long time. I just didn't have a nice matched pair of studio mics because, like I said, if we're gonna do it, let's do it upright so that we can really be confident in what we're hearing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is each speaker and each mic has its sweet spot, okay? So, as I mentioned off the top, I put the condenser mic halfway between the dust cap and the outer edge of the speaker right here, if that's your speaker. And that's really not the way to mic it up. Each speaker, like I said, will have a sweet spot. So experimenting with mic placement is really key, and I did not do that here. I just wanted to keep it very neutral right in the middle. So if I wanted a slightly brighter tone out of that Cannabis Rex, I would just take the mic and move it closer to the dust cap. Or on the ALNICO speaker, I might take it and move it closer to the speaker edge. I did a whole video on mic placement, but I did want to mention that each speaker will have its sweet spot. I didn't find them here. I just kind of split the difference to get like a nice neutral tone. Now that out of the way, I have to say I was actually thrilled with the results. I've read of other people doing, various combinations in the same cab and, kind of to mixed results, but I think it really has to do with what speaker you're pairing it with. And because that vintage 30 is such a common speaker, it's, so well used because it's, a nice middle of the road. It's got lots of bass, lots of mids, lots of treble. So you're always going to have a nice core sound. And then that secondary speaker you could use to flavor it up, whether you want to go ALNICO to give yourself more chime, or maybe Cannabis Rex to give yourself more mid-range, something like that. But I thought both were really usable and, a ton of fun to experiment with. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys enjoy videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll put links to all the gear I used in the video description below. All my personal links to the t-shirt store, tab store will be down there as well. If you guys ever used different speakers in the same cabinet, let me know what you used, and if you liked it or not, leave me a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what combinations you guys used and if you liked it or not. So other than that, have yourself a great day. Take care.